Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Bryce. Welcome to Cross Culture, where we engage culture with Christ by addressing culture's biggest problems from a Christian perspective. We want to let the gospel speak to culture, to transform culture into kingdom culture. Today, I'm really excited. We're going to be beginning our interview series where we sit down with other people and we hear their stories and we hear what God is doing in their life and how God is moving. And today I'm excited to be able to interview for our first interview of the series, a good friend of mine, someone I consider a mentor, a great man of God, someone that I've looked up to a lot of my life and been fortunate to be able to spend some time with. He's an elder at the church that I attend, and he has an incredible story of faith. And so I'm really excited to be able to sit down with him today and talk with him. And so without further ado, I want to introduce to you Frank Jones. Frank, thank you for being here with us. I'm excited for this. It's an honor to have you on, to be able to interview you, and for you to be our first guest for our interview series. So just tell us about yourself and who you are and what you do, and how would you introduce yourself? If someone asked the question, who is Frank Jones?
Frank Jones is married 38 years. I have 2 daughters, 2 grandchildren, and a third one on the way. I work in a factory, drive a fork truck, just a person who is enjoying the life that God's given him. Martial arts was a hobby I've been doing for a lot of years. I enjoy it. I've taught in town, the YWCA. I have one daughter who's a medical technician. She hands the tools to the doctor. Our other daughter is management and marketing, and Sarah's working on her second baby right now. So that's how I would introduce me.
Man, so that's what I love about you, Frank, is your view of yourself is very humble, and you don't view your life as centered around you. Like when you think of Frank Jones, what I heard you describe is a lot of people in your life. Not necessarily what you've done or accomplished, maybe a little bit about what you do or enjoy, but a lot about people in your life and people that are a part of your life and what they do. And I think that's such a cool thing, that you're a man of God who lives life, not just for yourself, but for the people in your life. And so, you know, you're also an elder here at Eastside. So you're part of the leadership team, and I've been really fortunate to be able to see you lead, and I'm fortunate to learn from you and to be under your guys' leadership. How did you get to this point where you're a family man? You have a lot of family. You have children. You have grandchildren. More on the way. You're a leader in the local congregation here in town. How did God bring Frank Jones to this place?
Frank Jones started I was born in Huntington, New York.
It's a long way away.
A long way away, yes.
Long way away.
I have no knowledge of my biological parents. I do know that they were both alcoholics, and I know that they mixed alcohol and child abuse, and the two didn't match. I have 2 biological sisters, but how I got from there to here is I went through foster care, a lot of foster homes when I was a kid. 5 different foster homes, and they all have their own stories. Then I went to a group home, St. Christopher's Jenny Clarkson School, which is in Dobbs Ferry, New York. Lived there for a while and went through foster care, another foster home. And through them, a brief stay in the military. And after I got out, I lived with a woman, and she threw me out, which was probably the smartest thing she's ever done. Then I was homeless and hitchhiking. I hitchhiked from Augusta, Georgia, all the way up to Fairborn, Ohio, which is near Dayton, Ohio. I lived in some woods in the middle of an apartment complex. Funny part of the story is I lived in a doghouse. I stole the doghouse out of somebody's backyard. I know that dog probably hated me, but I lived in a doghouse, and I would, people in the apartment complex were nice. Sometimes they'd give you food. Sometimes you ate out of a dumpster. Sometimes you slept in a dumpster if it was raining. And it wasn't a lucrative lifestyle. Some guys in the apartment complex were getting ready to hitchhike to Denver, Colorado. So I was doing nothing. I had nothing going on, so I went with them. And military taught me certain skills, and I could catch animals and make snare traps. So we did that kind of thing. We caught animals, and we ate off the side of the road. Hitchhiking, we went on Interstate 70, but the state police really frowned on that, and they kept chasing us off of Interstate 70. One day, they chased us off, and a state trooper told us, look, this road you can hitchhike on. Not on. I see you on the interstate again, I'm taking you to jail. The road just happened to be US 40, which is National Avenue in Brazil, Wabash Avenue in Terre Haute. So we walked the whole city of Brazil on 40. We got to the other side, and there's a bowling alley there. At the bowling alley, two men who were Rose-Hulman students, also Christians. Picture these two educated men who are at Rose-Hulman, a #1 engineering university in the United States of America, pick up two hitchhikers with knives all over them. So it was a unique experience for them. They picked us up, brought us to Rose, and offered us some pizza. They had went to Brazil to buy pizza to pull an all-nighter so they could study. So they fed us, and they invited us to church. So we went to church, and the strange thing was meeting the people at this church. I wasn't the person who hugged much. When I was a young child, I was raped by a homosexual guy. He got me drunk. So I had I was once one of the worst homophobes you will ever know. That has changed because of Jesus. But in that vein, when at this church, guys would come up and hug you, and I was like, no, thank you, and you'd push them away. No, thank you, push you away. But the minister, and he let me stay at what they call a brother's hotel. And the three men that were there, picture these men. Bill Schlacks was an educated man who worked at Hamilton Center. Carl Burke, a Rose-Hulman student, really smart. Greg Steele was a huge man who was a wrestler and went to ISU. And then there's this little piddly small little homeless dude living with him. Well, Abe came over to the house and started studying the Bible with us. And he said, here, I'll make a deal with you. Stay for 2 weeks. And if you're not interested, I'll give you money to get a bus. So in my mind, selfishly, I'm thinking, I get free room and board, I get food, and I'm okay for a while. Yeah, I'll take advantage of this. What I did not expect is the effect the gospel would have on me. Man. And Abe shared and told me, and I asked questions. 2 weeks later, I was immersed into Jesus. I became a Christian. Even the process after that, and that's how I got here to where I am now.
Man, from New York to Georgia to Wabash to a bowling alley to rooming with just a diverse group of men that you never would have expected to live with, all for different reasons and purposes, but to one conclusion and landing point, which is in a relationship with God. God moved you from the belly of the whale, per se, right to where he wanted you to be. That's amazing that you have this story where you would have never guessed or imagined where you are today, and yet you're here by the grace of God, and you have experience that can serve as great value in ministry, in the way you connect with other people, relate to other people. How would you say that your story has impacted your walk as a Christian, your pursuit as a Christian? Because I think a lot of people would say, yeah, I'm a Christian. And they maybe go to church on Sundays. Yeah. But that's not what I think of when I necessarily think of Frank Jones. When I think of Frank Jones, I think of a man that's on fire for God, that's very active in service to God. And so how would you say your former life that God brought you out of has impacted your new life that God has given you?
The thing I know the most is that I know what I should have been. Because if it wasn't for Jesus, I would have likely been in prison, in jail, addicted to drugs, or dead. Those are my options. And none of them are a road that I want to walk. Because Jesus said, broad is the way and wide is the road that leads to destruction. I was on a very wide road because I had too many options. Narrow is the word that leads to Jesus. So those things I didn't know then, but in getting here, I know what I didn't deserve. I don't deserve my wife. I don't deserve my daughters. I don't deserve grandkids. I deserve none of that. And getting it was like a mind-blowing thing because I should not have it. My ministry, a guy who worships with us, Tom Woodison,
my dad.
He says to me one day jokingly, he says, you're suited for the things you do. I do prison ministry, jail ministry, go to rehab centers. I talk to homeless people. And so Tom tells me I'm suited for that. At the beginning, I was insulted, but now I'm like, okay, I can take that.
That's a good
the thing I'm most passionate about is children. Children are, years ago, we started Shine Time here.
Yeah, big ministry.
The idea came up because I watched parents take their children and walk them down the middle aisle. You know where they were going. They were taking their child to the bathroom to whoop their child because they're acting up in church. So I'm like, wait a minute. This ain't working for them. Yeah. Why would they want to go to church? They're going to get whipped in church. So I came up with an idea. I posted to Abe about a Shine Time. My wife was there, and a guy named Al Storms and Lorraine were there. 4 of us. The idea was a group idea. So we posed it, and Abe says, good, you start it. And I was like, whoa, that wasn't the idea. The idea was just do it, but we did.
Go tell the minister.
Yeah. I did it for about 20 years. We did it by ourselves.
So it started as an idea that, hey, I want you to go start this because it's a needed ministry, and now you've been doing it for 20 years.
Yes, but we did it, but it didn't get revolutionized till Andrea and John came. She has organized and made it such a beautiful thing. Andrea organized everything, even the educational system here. She's an artist with that.
Yeah.
So that's been the ministry that I found myself be most effective in. It's because I was homeless and people looked down on me. The things I talked about are the people that get looked down on. When Jesus looked up to them.
Yeah.
I mean, he went to their houses. He ate with them.
Yeah, he's friends with them.
Yeah.
That's his friend.
And the people looked down on him for that. But I told the people at the House of Hope the first time I talked to them was that, look, you made mistakes. And I told them about my mistakes. I told them about the 4 scriptures in the Bible I have the most trouble with. Luke 9:23, if any man would come after me, let him deny himself, pick up his cross, and follow him down. Denying me, I was so insecure. I wanted to be noticed, and I still do.
Yeah, me too.
So, and I don't want to do that, but I do it. The other one was in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 5. Taking every thought captive, I wouldn't know how to do that. Philippians chapter 2 says, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility considers others better than yourself. I'm so insecure, why would I don't do that? Because of my past, which for me is an excuse, not a truth. And then the last one, Judges chapter 11, has the story of a man who was asked to fight for the people. He fought for the people, and I would say his name, but I'll butcher it. But and so what he did was he asked God, he said, God, if you make this battle for me, the first thing that comes out of my tent, I will sacrifice to you. After the battle was over, they won, he went up, his daughter came out of the tent. He yelled out, oh, my daughter, why'd you do that? He's on his knees, on his face. But she said, give me a few months, and she submitted to it. And he sacrificed his daughter. I have 2 daughters. I don't know if I could do that. So I told them at the House of Hope, and it made a connection, let them know we are exactly the same. Those people who are in jail, who are in prison, who are incarcerated, who are on drugs, who are on alcohol, who live homosexual lifestyles, transgender lifestyles, these people who live those lifestyles, something made that happen. We spend less time judging them because of it and starting talking to them first and figuring out why we may help. Yeah. And that's why I guess God has pointed me to dysfunctional, people call them dysfunctional lifestyles because I come out of that lifestyle. So it makes sense. Yeah.
So you've been comforted in a way that now you can offer comfort to others in a similar way.
Yes.
And that's what Scripture tells us, is that we are comforted to be made comforters. And I think it's significant that you're not just satisfied with going to church and sitting in a pew and maintaining the status quo. You're not just waiting for heaven one day, but rather you're living a life in pursuit to let others know what you didn't know and to have what you didn't have because you've been given something that you could have never imagined you having from Jesus. And I think that's valuable. I think that's something Christians that we all can learn from is that all of us bring with us to the table a unique experience, a unique walk, brokenness in different ways, flaws, and all of those. I think a lot of times we, as in my experience, we view them as so bad that we just shove them under the surface. But God, although He saved us from that place served as a valuable role in life that in a lot of ways shapes us and shapes our ministry, shapes who we reach, how God uses us. And I think it's significant. I think it's a compliment. It's a good thing that the people you minister to, you do so naturally. Or like as my dad says, what's he say to you again? He says, you're suited for that. Yeah, that's a compliment. That's Jesus could have been told the same thing. You're suited for it. It's so natural to you. You know what I mean? Man, so what do you think the biggest challenge in your journey through everything you've been through? What's been the biggest challenge in regards to faith that you can think of that you've had to overcome and that you've gone through, or maybe that you're still overcoming? I don't know.
Biggest challenge when I was a young boy, and I was in one foster home. The foster father took me and sat me in his kitchen in a corner by his cabinets on a chair. He faced me, and my back faced the cabinets. With no warning or anything, he took a closed fist and punched me straight in the face, knocked me off the cabinet, and says, telling you never to trust anybody. Well, trusting people, it is easy to put on a facade and say you trust, but you keep them at a distance. Yeah. And now I make mistakes on a daily basis, and I mess up and I screw up and things I don't deserve, and I know that. But there are certain, there's now it's I'll tell anybody about my inadequacies and my sins. When I preached at Camp Obashi, I told the kids about my pornography addiction. I said, so that they understand, they would listen. Sometimes I think when preaching, people give the preachers some fake opinion of them, thinking that they're perfect when they fail to remember there's just a man who's talking to me. Yeah. And that's my biggest thing, is trusting people. Number two is a very insecure personality. Sometimes you want to be noticed or seen by people. Because when I was a kid, I had two foster parents. One foster father beat his wife in front of us often and beat the foster kids, but not his own. But he was a deacon in a Russian Orthodox church. The whole service is done in Russian. And the funny part of that story is the archbishop of the church, named Archbishop Desitheus, he'd want to teach us Russian. So he'd give you a little bit of vodka, and he'd say it loosened your tongue. It loosened a lot of things. But and he would teach you Russian. But the father, and then another one was, both of these foster parents, when they tell you, I don't want you in my home. I wish you weren't here. The one told me that the only reason you're here is because I get money from you or you wouldn't be here. The other one said, I don't want you. I don't care if you're in my house. And that's why I went in the military, because I had to leave his house. So you get this complex of you're not wanted. And those are two things, and which caused insecurities in me sometimes, that I irritate because of the fact that I think I should be heard instead of sometimes just being quiet, being humble, and sitting back and just behind the scenes. Some of the greatest Christians I know, Mary Ellen Adams and Audie Adams and Nina, his wife, and Tom Craig and Mary Ellen Craig, the thing about them is they could just sit there and say nothing, and they yelled, "I'm a Christian," louder than anything. So that's someday I said I'd like to be like them. I even, I told Lynn Hostetler, I grew up, I'll be just like you, because that's the way they are. My goal someday, but that was my biggest challenges is insecurities.
So, and how would you say Jesus has, in a sense, satisfied those deep yearnings? Because at the end of the day, I think and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me like you're saying that inside of you, there's a little boy that wants to be seen, known, and loved. And that's because of where you come from. And so how would you say Jesus has given you that? How has Jesus given you what you need to satisfy those things so that your longing for those things don't run your life? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Because I think a lot of times it's easy for my insecurities, my longing for attention or acceptance or belonging. I think it can run the show, and usually that's when I'm not receiving from when I'm not letting Jesus give to me what He has to offer, because I think Jesus has something for us that can satisfy us and satisfy those longings. Because that's and so how has Jesus been the one that satisfied that for you?
First, part of the insecurity stuff was when I was in foster care, I was always labeled as LD, learning disabled. And I believed that about myself. And that ADD and that kind of stuff. And so, and I still struggle with it. But in learning, when I learned some things. The Bible captivates me when I read it. Now, there are some things in there, Levitical laws or genealogies. You read them, but you're like, oh, Lord, shoot me and put me out of my misery kind of thing. But then there are those stories in there that are just hypnotic to read, like the one in Judges 11. Genesis 22. How could Abraham was willing to sacrifice his son and went all the way up there. David, his repentance in Psalms 51. The deepest of repentance that's ever known. So for me, God has given me the acceptance that I've always looked forward to. When I read the Bible, being educated and learning and remembering stuff. And then when I went to school, the second time I went, I graduated with honors, a 3.54. And how I learned it? Because I have a wife who's an educator, and I have a daughter who was in college at the same time with me. And she was, they were both far more up there in what they worked on than what I did. Mine was industrial technology. Rachel's a surgical tech. She hands doctors tools. My wife, an educator for 38 years, far more intelligent than me. So, but I excelled in school, so I learned I can learn stuff. I'm not learning disabled. I'm not ignorant. I'm not these things. And each one of us learns differently, and I had to figure out how I learned. And then that's where, then when I learned skills on how to talk to kids and figure out they were struggling with something. And the ones with the worst struggles, they would want to sit down and talk and have an effect on some. And for years, you see those children thrive.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what God has done the most of is educated me that I'm not stupid and I can do things. I just have to keep it in perspective. Who made me able to do those things?
Yeah, I think that's so significant and relevant because what I hear you saying is that Jesus has given me an acceptance that has satisfied my inner child's need, and He's given me a completely new view and belief of myself, which is fascinating because I think in our culture today, people, our world, our culture is struggling with this view of themselves and who they are and their self-worth. And I think people really believe that they're nothing, that they're garbage, or that they're stupid, or that they're just, or there's people who don't even believe that they're loved by God. And so I think it's fascinating it's so important. I wish everybody could know that becoming a Christian isn't just about becoming some morally perfect person. It's not just going to church on Sundays, but it has an internal effect on us. It transforms us. It gives us a new view of ourselves. It changes how we live our lives. It changes our longings. It gives us satisfaction that satisfies the things in which drive us that we can never find answers for. It's like a bucket with holes in it, and we're always leaking, and we just have to keep filling it and filling it and filling it and filling it. But ultimately, Jesus gives us a new bucket, a restored one.
My bucket, what was interesting is that the people in my journey of when I first became a Christian, the people who discipled me, for instance, Bill Schlacks, my vocabulary when I came to Terre Haute was superlatives, adjectives, metaphors, or slang.
Yeah.
So Bill would teach me a new word. He'd say, use this word this week in a sentence. And I would, so to learn a new vocabulary. So I replaced the foul language with something different, or the slang or the street slang with something so I could hold an intelligent conversation. Rhonda Cruz, who went here, she told me with no uncertainty, your hair looks horrible. They brought me to International Village. She cut my hair. Other people, other details, like how to find a job. Somebody made me a resume. And I walked from Blakely Avenue all the way up Wabash, up to 41, on the other side back, and hand out resumes. And landed a job at the Hardee's at ISU in one day to find a job. So the people's advice going to college, Casey Cheney told me that you can get into college for free. I didn't ask the right questions, though, because when I went up to the college to get into school, I said, I understand I can go to college for free. And they said, well, Mr. Jones, you better sit down because I need to explain this to you. So I took out a Pell Grant, which was probably not the smartest thing for me to do, but I did. And I went there for an automotive degree the first time. Didn't apply myself, but I got into college. So people's advice into my life, and I took and listened to it. The problem is that I don't want to be mean here, but some people stay homeless because they don't want to take advice, stay on drugs, stay on addictions, stay on this, because they don't want to take advice from another person. But when you start taking advice from the right people, which is what I did, that changes your life because God put them there for a reason. He had them say things, just like writing scriptures. Atheists would argue that the Bible's made up fables. So how is it that 40 different men with 40 different literary designs could write the Bible in different vocabularies and different structures and different punctuation, but still all came up with the same accurate message or consistent theme, pointing to a man named Jesus? Made up fables. Well, that's a pretty good fable. It came together. So my thing is that I've been, the people who gave me advice from the scripture and from personal experience is what changed things for me today. It makes all the difference.
See, so part of Frank Jones just isn't who he is today because of himself, but because of the people God has put in his life. So God uses people to move us closer to himself.
And that's why going to church is so important. Because you meet those people, the building, not the church, going to church, going to the people, those who are called out to serve. That Greek word, ecclesia, those who are called to serve. Yeah. If you meet those people, in whatever building you go to, a sanctuary, we call it, because you get away from the world, so it's a sanctuary for a brief time. And you meet those people in the building, those people will make a difference. That's why you can't just be by yourself as a Christian. You will not make it because there's no advice. The advice alone is worth being around people. It's kind of being in a family. Every family has different people. You have that weird Uncle Joe that smells bad breath, or that other uncle who's weird, or that aunt who does this, who has pink hair. But they're all valuable. Yeah. That's what the church is too. A bunch of people, but these bunch of people. Mary Ellen Adams, she's a shorter statured woman, but she's as big as life. She's like 9 foot tall to me. because of who she is. So it's that thing that will make a difference in the person's life, and it will get you out of homelessness or whatever it is else it is.
I think when I hear this, I think culture could benefit from this conversation so much. And when I say that is because a lot of people I talk to and a lot of people I know, they want God, they want a relationship with God, but they don't want church. And they want God, but they want some mountaintop spiritual encounter and some experience, right? An event that could take place that could completely transform their life and just change everything. And I'm not saying that can't happen. I think there's impact events. I think things happen in people's lives that are significant enough to where it could be those moments. And I think even in what you've shared, there's been pivotal moments. But ultimately what I hear is a man who God has been slow cooking with. Transformation has come through slow change over time, and a lot of effort and a lot of work and a lot of submission and a lot of yielding and a lot of failure and a lot of picking yourself back up and keep going. I think it's interesting that the transformation you've experienced hasn't just been some mountaintop experience in a singular moment by yourself with God. It's been through the church. It's been through his people. It's been over time. And I agree with you. That's why we need the church. If we want to be transformed by God, then it is surrounding ourselves with God's people, because God has for us something that's greater than what we could have imagined. But how are we to get to that place outside of his people and outside of his body? I think that's such a true point. What would you, if you could somehow take a time traveling device and go back and talk to Frank Jones from back in Georgia before you left to hitchhike, Frank Jones that knows God now and knows what you know now, what would you tell Frank Jones then in that moment?
I would think, I'd tell myself, I don't know what God's plans are for me, but the place where I am at that point in Georgia, the wisest thing I could have done was found a job and found a church, if I was a Christian then, and found a group of people that I know I could plug into and would work together to transform me as well as them. I believe in my heart, I tend to be more charismatic than some people like to think. And I think God orchestrated every step of every movement in my life, that he had a plan and a direction for me to go. And struggle was the most important part of that plan. A guy named James writes a book in the Bible, 5 chapters. He starts the book and ends the entire book with struggle. So there must be something there. Paul in the book of Romans talks about struggle. Jesus had to spend 33 years struggling to teach people, and they couldn't even get anybody to listen in his own hometown. So struggle was really important to that process. And so now when I look on it, I also wonder, would it have worked in Georgia? Maybe not, because God had something in Indiana. All the things I know I didn't deserve, I have in Indiana. What I deserved is probably the people he's got me ministering now to. And so it's kind of a dichotomy, a little strange thing, that what I should have been, but I'm not, God decides, well, then you're going to work with those people. And saying those people, it does not saying it in lack of a better term, is lost souls or people who don't know Jesus. And that's strange to me, but I think was God's plan all along. So maybe the question shouldn't be what I would have done to Frank in Georgia. If I knew what was coming, I said, well, let's go faster. Let's get to Indiana quicker. Because it was strange. Yeah, and the guys that lived in that apartment complex read the Bible. They did, and they would pray together. And they had some strange beliefs about the Bible. I could care less at the time about the Bible. I just had something to do because living in that doghouse in that little woods was not working for me.
Yeah.
I mean, but that was it. But God worked the plan out. And along the way, struggle made the best thing happen. Because I remember we were in Columbus, Ohio, and we slept in a dumpster behind a place, dark. We didn't police mess with. Slept in the dumpster. There were rats in that dumpster too. They didn't bother me at all. The rats, for some reason, I was interested in being on bags with the lid closed so I could stay out of the weather.
Yeah.
And so, but it gives you perspective on some people have lived their lives and had a silver spoon in their hand. And I'm grateful they got to have that, and I'm glad for them. I wouldn't change a thing that happened to me, not a thing, because I wouldn't be what I am. Now, I have a long way to go, but I wouldn't change a thing of where I am right now. The major tools God used were people. The greatest tool God's given me was my wife. It's a conversation for another time. But, and then, daughters. I remember we were watching a video here at church, Growing Kids God's Way. Surprising situation it was. We had a smaller house in the middle of Terre Haute, and in the kitchen, there was a little square in the window. And I was watching the video because I missed it here. And he was talking about keeping promises. And Rachel's the little thing at the time, our oldest daughter. She said, "That's you, Dad. You don't keep your promises." Like, ouch. But she was right, And so you learn lessons from the youngest. That's why Jesus said, "Let the little children, because the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." That's why talking to kids is so valuable, because some people say I'm teaching them. No, they're probably teaching you, and you just don't know it. I learned a lot. One young man asked me in church one day, he says, "Why don't parents think we're important?" That was one of the questions I didn't know how to answer. And I didn't say the name of the person because I don't want to, but and that was an interesting question. And for me, my goal with Shine Time and with kids was making sure they know they're important. And at Camp Bobashi, that venue there, I don't know, 30 or so years, my wife introduced me to Camp Bobashi. It's her fault, which is great. I'm glad to blame her for that. And then working at camp and getting to see things changed and seeing great men like Nick Stott, a humble giant, baptized more people and preached the greatest sermon that was ever preached at camp in mine, Tom's, your dad's opinion. He preached a sermon about John the Baptist. He brought a bowl with grasshoppers and honey in it. By the time he got done preaching, all the kids at camp and myself were eating bugs with honey. We ate them. And it was the greatest sermon ever preached. Well, what does he do? 15, 20 years later, he goes preaches a sermon about his grandma. And he beats that other sermon. So, some of the gentle giants of faith are people who are younger than you. So it's, I don't know. The journey's been interesting, but I do have a long way to go yet because I got a lot of things I have to learn. And from the place of serving as an elder, some people may think they step into that place because they earned it or they're entitled to it. None of that applies to me. It's just a consistent, constant challenge. I'm sitting in the room with 3 educated men, and educated in the word, educated. They've lived every second of their life for Jesus, basically. I, on the other hand, have not. So it's perspective. You get around people who, and so when they get talking, we get reading books and these kind of things. Now they got me reading books, reading through the Bible in a year. And the change is all because of people in the body of Christ, and being willing to let them have access to me. I am not homeless and I am not condemned anymore because people showed an interest and I listened to their advice. If people are listening to this out there and they're homeless, you can get away from that. If you're addicted. I met two of the most inspirational people, Nathan and Maddie Coyle from the House of Hope. They were both addicts in the House of Hope program. Nathan was in prison when his sister, Sarah Morgan, wrote a book. She went looking for a devotional. This doesn't happen unless God has started it, unless God did it. If an atheist is listening, you can't argue with this story. You can't. And so here they are. He was in prison for meth. The pictures of him that you see, he's drawn and frail, broken figure in prison. So she couldn't find a devotional. She wrote one. She wrote a devotional and gave it to him in prison. She'd send him a prayer with it and a scripture with it. He'd read it. Then he started teaching it and stuff in prison to the prisoners. So they'd ask him, what are we preaching on today? He'd put it out and hang it up and then talk about it. He was converted in prison because of that evil. Now, he got out of the program. His wife, Maddie, was in the House of Hope program. She gets out and they get married. Now he has a daughter. She has a stepdaughter. Now they have another daughter, and they bought themselves a food truck. M&N Food, Maddie and Nathan, and it's their ministry. And businesses let them park outside. And they go to a jail and they share the gospel with the inmates. His book has been in a number of different prisons because they sell the book, you donate, and they put it in prisons. So now it's all over the place. The devotional changing lives in prison because of one man and one lady writing a book. If Jesus doesn't exist, we have a problem because guess what? You can't argue with that story. My biggest conviction is you cannot argue with a changed life. My favorite thing to do right now is watch on Facebook and YouTube debates between an atheist and a Christian, and you watch them debate. And I listen to them and conversate. And the problem is that I couldn't debate. I would much rather say, look, I hear what you're saying, and I hear where you're staying, but I want to know why you decided to be an atheist instead of a Christian. The bottom line, not the rhetoric, just the bottom line. People decide to go on drugs for a reason. They would commit crime because of a reason. They run away from Jesus because of a reason. If I find out what the reason is, then we find a way to convert the person. People won't answer that question because they're afraid of what the truth is.
Yeah. What you're describing here is the fact that it's less of a information or intellectual problem, and it's more of a heart problem. Yep. We don't want the answer to the question. We don't want to address the elephant in the room.
No.
We know the answer to the question. We don't want to even ask it. We don't like to bring it up. Man, this has been incredible. Before we wrap up, what would you say what's the biggest thing God is currently doing in your life? Like, what's God teaching Frank right now? And is there anything that we can, or maybe anybody listening to this to, is there anything that you want them to know as we wrap up? Like, if you could leave them with anything.
The biggest thing, the value of his word, the Bible. Reading through the Bible in 1 year. It was a challenge that was put forth. So my wife and I both bought a copy of the Bible in chronological order, and we're reading through it. The stories are phenomenal. Reading through the Bible, and there is comedy, there is drama, there is joy, there is elation, there is suffering, there is you're reading a story and you're like, what's next? And you even know what's next, but then you'll see a detail that you never, I've read this 1,000 times. How did I miss that? It's God will speak to you from those stories. And from reading scripture in 1 year, it's not that I read through the Bible in 1 year and claim, oh, I did it. What I've done is as I'm reading through it, I will write down something that gets my attention and say study next to it. So after I've read through the Bible 1 year, I want to go back to all those subjects and I said study and study them. Like, why did they dress in sackcloth? Right? That's just weird. Why did God choose to wipe out all of these people? And were there innocent people in that he wiped out in the city? No. should I question God in those things, or should I just, it's not for me to know? Or if I get to heaven someday and I want to ask those questions, God will not, it's not meant for me to know. I really don't care to know, because it's not going to change my opinion of God. So I'm thinking, my thing I could say to people most importantly is this: learn to read the Bible and enjoy the stories. Because it's funny, Elijah is walking along the beach. Some kids are harassing him.
Yeah.
So what is that? Sheep. You can do it one more time. A she-bear devours them, mauls them, it says. But there's a punishment for messing with old people.
Yeah. Or baldies, yeah.
And like the story of building an ark. At the beginning, I didn't know what a cubit was. Just from your middle finger to your elbow.
Yeah.
And it's different lengths.
Yep.
These are fascinating things. Jesus calming a storm. How do you do that? The stories go on. It's just countless. So learn to read the Bible and read it with the drama and the energy it deserves. Too many people will sit up and read the morning scripture and read it and monotone instead of yes,
Lord. Yeah.
that story. Instead of saying, Jesus stood up out of the boat and he said, "Shh, be quiet." And it's as if the storm knew its creator was talking to it and it was time to be quiet.
Yeah.
You don't get past something like that. That's amazing. So if people learn to just read the Bible and trust what's written there by 40 different guys, and the entire message of the Bible points to one event, a man named Jesus dying on a cross for their sins. You read the scriptures. There's a guy named John Clayton. And I can't remember his name. There's a lawyer in the Guinness Book of World Records. He's won 246 cases in a row, murder cases. Both of them were challenged to take, John Clayton was an atheist scientist, and the other one a lawyer. They were challenged to take their skills and use them to disprove God. At the end, they both wound up converted to Christianity because they couldn't do it, because of Scripture.
Yeah, and it's kind of a side note, but kind of to that, currently the man with the world's highest IQ recently converted to Christianity. And his explanation is pretty much in my calculations, like when I actually sit down and look at all the information, it makes logical sense. Frank, thank you for the honor of sitting down and hearing from you, hearing your story, hearing what God is doing, what God has done. I'm reminded of the passage in the Bible where it says that God is able to do far more, exceedingly more, than all that we could ask or imagine. And when I hear your story, when I hear your life, I don't see a man sitting here that could have dreamt that up or imagined that or thought of it himself. I see a man who has submitted to the will and the power of God in his life, and God has done with you and is doing in your life far more than what you could have even asked or imagined. And so thank you for sitting down with us. Thank you for our friendship and who you've been in my life. Thank you for the work that you do. I really think that more of us as Christians should be able to receive the compliment that we're well suited for ministering to those people, or how certain people might be labeled as outcasts or viewed down upon, even in Christian circles, unfortunately. So thank you for being a lot like Jesus. Thank you for being a friend to sinners, as Jesus is accused of in Luke, So as we wrap up, I just want to highlight that your life has a relevance to the culture around us, because like you said in the beginning of your story, Frank, you were sleeping in a doghouse. People in this world today, in our culture today, they may not be physically sleeping in a doghouse listening to this, but their life, they're in a doghouse. They're in this dark place. They're sleeping in dumpsters per se. They don't know what's going to happen next. They have no idea if they're going to make it. And if they're listening to this, I hope they can know that they matter, that they're important, and that God has a plan for them and is working in their life and has a desire to bring them to a place that's better than where they're at and into a relationship with him. And I know Frank from then might not have even thought that could have even been possible. And there's people who don't even think that could be possible now. But it is possible. So thank you for sharing your story. If you're watching this, thank you for tuning in. Remember, please like this video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing more interviews where we hear people's story, hear what God is doing, hear what we can learn from those stories, and hopefully it can land with us in our own life. It can relate to us in our own life, connect with us as well. Remember, our purpose is to engage culture with Christ by addressing culture's most pressing problems with Christ from a Christian perspective, letting the gospel speak to culture to transform culture into kingdom culture. Thank you for watching this. Until next time, God bless.